Welcome to our Wednesday, December 12th business meeting and work session. We always open our public meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you please stand and join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. On to our mission and vision statements, and we have new ones that we voted in. The mission statement says that the Richmond Community Schools mission is to graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college career ready. And our vision is that by 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana. The Board of School Trustees recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporation matters. So we have set aside two 30-minute periods for public comment during each board meeting. The maximum time for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. If the public comment reflects inaccurate or incomplete information, the superintendent may clarify the facts, or if more investigation is needed, the comment will be clarified at the next meeting. Mrs. Stewart, do we have anyone signed up for public commentary?
We do not.
Thank you. Now we're on to snapshots of success.
At this point in the year, we have the pleasure of introducing to the public some designers of some holiday cards. And we have three people that I would like to introduce tonight. And I would like for them to come to the podium right up here. I would like for our two second place recipients tonight for the Holiday Card Award, Brooklyn Centers and Natalia Hampton. Could you two please come to the podium? And I'd like for our first place winner, Kelly Mullins from Charles, to join them. Brooklyn is from Westview. Natalia is from Fairview. We have two fourth graders and a third grader. Girls, what we're going to see tonight is the board president, Mrs. Baumgartner, coming to join you, and she's going to award some certificates. And I'll let her join you at this point, and then we'll review as soon as she's finished.
We have two second place, Brooklyn Centers. And if the camera can get this is Brooklyn's picture. Would you like to hold
Turn
that?
it the other way. Turn it the other way.
It needs to be turned out this way.
Toward us. There you go.
There you go. Yes.
Here's your certificate of recognition. Natalia.
That's not her.
I'm sorry.
She keeps trying to give you those.
And then our first place winner.
First place is Kelly Mullins, and she also receives a whole stack of cards that she designed.
So I should be showing them up here and not.
Yes.
Exactly.
Those are our Christmas cards.
Now, I told the girls that they would also be interviewed by the board.
Poor girl.
Yes.
Girls, I know in some cases we have principals or maybe even your art teacher. You have parents. Would you like to introduce someone for us? Natalia, you want to begin by introducing the people who are here for you?
This is Goss, my art teacher, and my mom, Nicole.
Very nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Brooklyn, would you like to introduce who came for you?
my mom and dad, John and Beth, my grandma,
Wow.
my art teacher, Mrs. Hugenboom, and my principal.
That's very nice. You're very talented. Thank you. Congratulations.
My mom and dad, my principal, and my art teacher, Mrs. Hugenboom, and my grandma.
And grandma.
Grandma was awesome.
To all of you sitting back in the audience, congratulations.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. You all have a great Christmas. You can sit down now.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you, girls.
Who is Miss Hugenboom?
Who is Miss Hugenboom?
There she is.
I heard a lot about you. I just kind of wanted to know who you were.
You have a lot of talented students.
She's to be commended because she teaches art in a room that was never supposed to be an art room over at Charles, and she's doing a great job.
Well, both of the art teachers, very nice job.
Well, and really every art teacher. That's one of the best things that we have going on here is all the art that shows up in our room. So that's great.
Now we'll move on to reports and discussion topics.
It also should be emphasized to our students, they're not obligated to be here.
For the rest of the meeting.
May get a little dry.
You're very welcome to be here, though, if you'd
That's
like to
right.
stay.
Okay.
It's the principals to be here.
It is nice. I think
And the art teachers.
the whole
Nice of them to come.
entourage is great. This is the review of our CPAS data, and for just the audience out there in television land, CPAS is our way of communicating with our principals and staff about their goals, how student achievement is proceeding in their buildings, and our director of the Office of Student Achievement maintains that data and will be reporting to the board tonight concerning our CPAS conversations. So, Dr. Parker.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I'll begin by saying most of this data you've had in your hands for quite some time. This Friday is the closing of the second assessment window for acuity, and so we'll have new data for you soon. The holdup was we were waiting to have conversations with all of our principals, instructional coaches, and leaders in the building to talk about how the schools are responding to the data, because that's the information that you wanted to have. And so we finished our CPAS meetings, and so we'll review this and kind of share it with you in a new format. In reviewing our data from our first CPAS meetings, overall, just some things that we looked at from a district level. This was the first time that we have reported to you reading scores for grades K through 11 and partially 12. And in reviewing that data, there was some good news. Our in-class dibbles for the beginning of the year for our kindergarten through second grade students revealed some upward trends. One thing that we noted was our kindergarten students actually came to school more prepared and ready to learn than they have in previous years when we look at the foundational reading skills that they came to us with. Last year, our students, 45% of our students were at benchmark at the beginning of the year in kindergarten. This year it was 51%, so that's a pretty significant increase. The other thing that we looked at was the cohorts. So the students who were in kindergarten last year started kindergarten at 45% at benchmark. Our first grade this year started at 58% at benchmark, and so they've made gains and they've maintained those gains. Our first grade last year started the year at 45% at benchmark. Our second grade this year started at 69% at benchmark, so that's a really nice gain for those students. Another thing that was brought to light by the collecting of this data is we really need to have a better measure for grades 3 and 4 for reading. We have DIBELS, M-class, DIBELS for K to 2, and then we have SRI for grades 5 and above. For grades 3 and 4, we relied on some instructional materials that were within the curriculum. We would really like to have an outside the curriculum independent measure of reading for grades 3 and 4. In looking at grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 at our intermediate schools, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that our biggest concern at the start of the year was 5th grade. That class is as fourth graders struggled, and they continue to struggle as fifth graders, and so we'll talk about how we responded to that. The other thing that the data pointed out to us, that grades 9 to 12, what we suspected was confirmed. We have a lot of students at our high school who still struggle in the area of reading. That's not the best news, but the good news is we have a structure in place at the high school now that is extremely responsive to the data. They looked at that data and within a week had a plan put in place to address the needs of those students. As far as our standards mastery, which is the second target within the highest student achievement focus area, our beginning of the year acuity was a little bit higher than it was at this time last year, at the beginning of the year. And again, the only anomaly there was the fifth grade, which was a little bit lower. In looking at behavior and the data that we've looked at in behavior, we've looked at behavior in a number of ways, and I'll talk to you about how we finally landed on looking at it. But one thing that was really encouraging was, for the most part, our students behave at school every single day. 98.5% of our kids do what they're supposed to do every single day. We have a small number of students who are chronic, who exhibit chronic misbehavior and sometimes extreme misbehavior, and so they get the attention. And so we've really responded to a lot of anecdotal information, and that's okay. We need to respond to that, but we also need to kind of temper that with the fact that the majority of our students really do what they're supposed to do. So in terms of how we're reporting the data to you, what you see in front of you is sort of a subset of the strategic plan that the board created. And I don't know if Dr. Borf got a chance to share that with you, but the cabinet has really made this our working document. We really see that what's in blue, those are our marching orders. Everything that we do focuses on getting us to the targets that you've set. And so as we look at our data, we want to talk about in terms of these focus areas and these targets. And so I've provided you with the data points, and then I've kind of looked at it from the district level and then how each school has responded to that at their building level. And so, as I said, at the district level in terms of reading, one of the things that we noted was that we really want to start looking at some other assessment tools for grades 3 and 4, and we have teachers and coaches looking into that. They've got some ideas they're kind of investigating. And another issue that's come up is a question about what does fidelity of implementation mean. That was a big buzzword last year when we changed programs, and people really felt the need to really implement with fidelity. And so Mr. Millis and I met with the instructional coaches today and having a really nice conversation with them about how we proceed so that teachers can do the right thing but feel like they have a little bit of decision making and a little bit of ability to respond to the data for their students. And so we've put a plan in place to deal with that. The other ones, the schools have really looked at their data and come up with some plans. I won't go over each of those, but if you have any questions specifically about Focus Area 1 and Target 1.1, I'll be happy to answer a question about that. Barring that, we'll move on to the Target 1.2, which is our 90% students mastering state and national standards. And at the district level, as I pointed out, we are seeing some growth, and I can tell you our Acuity B scores are also trending upwards. We still have probably about 20 more students to test between now and Friday, but across the district at almost every grade level, they're trending upward. And we have in the action steps that we have in the full document, we have lots of things that we're putting in place to address this goal. But another thing that has come up, we have instructional coaches in all of our buildings, and one of the roles they play is data coach. They help to compile the data, get the data put in spreadsheets or ways that teachers can use it, and to disseminate that data, share that data, analyze that data. But the other side of their job is to be an instructional coach, to help teachers in terms of their pedagogy and how they're teaching. And so they go in and they model and they coach and they can have conversations with teachers. And so what we're finding in our conversations is not a surprise to me because I do the same thing. Coaches are spending a lot of time at their computers finding data, putting data in spreadsheets, getting data ready for other people to look at it. And so I have identified that as a really big need in this district, is to have a data warehouse that is responsive to the questions that we ask. For instance, if you were to ask a question, and this is just an example from another school district that had a problem with redshirting, people sending their kids to kindergarten at 6 instead of 5, and the superintendent or the board said, does that do anything academically for these kids? Do they have some sort of an academic advantage from being held back? Well, if we were to ask that question here, it would take me about a day to answer it, to get the data pulled from PowerSchool and then go to all the other data sources to find that. And so Mr. Tidrow and I have met with several companies to try to find a response to that question. Is there something out there that is reasonably priced that will meet our needs and make it so that coaches, teachers, principals have quick access to the data and can quickly answer the questions that they have? And so I think we found something, and we're going to be moving forward with that. But the flip side of that is then coaches will have time to get in and do what they're supposed to be doing, is coaching our teachers. And so they're very excited about that. So that was a response to the data that we had. All of the schools have come up with responses. I will just point out the high school again because this is exciting. I told Dr. Borf today, for the first time since I've been in this position, I can give you some information about where we are relative to the percent of our kids who might pass the end-of-course assessments at the high school for Algebra 1 and English 10. The teachers got together and created some common formative assessments. This is their first time through with it. Their numbers were very disappointing, they thought, but as we talked through it, they had set 80% as their benchmark. Kids had to be 80% proficient in order to be considered predicted to pass. I reminded them that on acuity, 50% proficiency will land you in the predicted to pass. So they're taking another look at their measures and sort of a pilot year to see where they need to be. They'll have better predictive data next year, but it's kind of exciting that they're at least keeping that data. And then as far as the graduation rate, the high school is more on top of this than they've ever been. They are tracking their students as a cohort. So if you go to the data room at the high school, you can look at the cohort for 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. You can tell just with a visual scan what percent of those kids are on track to graduate, which is good news to have. It's good information to have, but probably the bigger piece is that they are responding to that. Teachers have been assigned as advisors, and their students are their advisees, and it is their responsibility to follow up on those students. If a student is not on track to graduate because they failed a course, it becomes that person's responsibility to make sure that they've met with the counselor and they've either gotten into that course or they're signed up for credit recovery. If it's that they're having attendance issues, then that needs to be addressed, so that it's kind of taken a really, really big place and brought it down to a manageable size by having each teacher responsible for a smaller group of students. And finally, I've already alluded to what we've done for the safe and orderly learning environment, and I know there'll be some conversation about that target and how we're tracking it, but we did respond to the anecdotal data at the intermediate schools because our principals and our teachers were saying we're exhausted trying to keep up with the small minority of kids who are causing the issues. And so we knew we created new schools. We brought 5th and 6th grade into a group of students that were 7th and 8th graders. And one thing that we knew we needed to do was relook, revise, refine our positive behavior and intervention supports plans in those schools, because what worked for 7th and 8th grade might not work with 5th and 6th grade. And so we took our district-wide PBIS coaches and we placed one at each intermediate school, and their job will be to help those schools redevelop their intervention plans so that they have a system in place that will prevent those misbehaviors. And I suspect they will also be dealing with some of the other side of it too, dealing with those misbehaviors. The other thing that we've done is at Vail, we recognized a problem with a small number of students, and we had a temporary solution to send one of the community youth services teachers over there to provide some support for those students and kind of get that building back under control. They have the same issue. They're a new staff, a new school, and they're going to be working on their PBIS plans as well. That's our data.
Aaron?
At Vail, following up what you just said in regards to a CYS teacher, when you say to provide support for those students, what does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, it's basically, those students have been identified, and one of the biggest issues is long periods of time where they are spending with one teacher in a classroom and having a hard time keeping focused and really creating distraction for the other students. So for the reading block, that 90-minute reading block, small groups of those students are going down and working with Mrs. Irwin. And so they're out of their classroom for 90 minutes. And I think she has 2 different groups that she works with. And so what they're working on then is, in anticipation that she won't be able to be there forever, is finding ways then to begin to return them to their classroom and try to build some supports around them so that they can be maintained in that setting.
Pat? This is a general question that I couldn't find an answer to. As I was thinking about teachers using data, how do, for example, the 3rd grade teachers look at the 4th grade data to see what they need to be doing back in the 3rd grade? You see what I'm saying? It's not just that student, but when you look at the standards that are either green, yellow, or red on the material that you gave us, I kind of wondered whether those teachers move up to take a look at that data so that they can see what they might have missed in their curriculum.
Well, one of the ways that we try to encourage schools to look at their data is the way that we look at their data. We start sort of from that balcony view. What's the
Right.
big picture? And so are there any trends district-wide that we need to be looking at? And then a school would look at their school data, because 5th grade teacher or 4th grade teachers are responsible for all the kids in their building when those scores come back. So it's not just the 4th grade students. And so every teacher has a vested interest in the success of every student. And so they look at it from a school-wide, and are there trends? And one of the things they do is they look at that acuity data and say, are there some standards that from grade level K to 4 that we are not doing a good enough job on? And so they look at it from that, so we can look at our curriculum, look at how we're implementing things. Then they look at it from a grade level. So a grade level would say, how's 4th grade doing? Are there some things that we need to be doing better? And then they look at it from a class level, and those are the meetings that teachers have and say, wow, your class really, really did well on that standard, and mine didn't do so well. What are you doing? Can we talk about that? And then, of course, they have to drill it down to the individual student level
Sure.
as well.
I was kind of interested in the alignment between and not just in that class. So it would make sense to me.
Other questions, Jeff?
I could tell you know exactly what you're talking about because you just fly right through it.
Sorry.
But I guess from my perspective, maybe some things that yeah, we do have the data. You know, I think that is 23 or 24 pages of it, which is what we want. In order for us to facilitate a discussion, I couldn't follow it. It was too much information because I couldn't coordinate what information you were giving us with what information we already had. So I guess I'm kind of asking the questions. Maybe one of the things that would have helped is if the next time we have our CPAS discussion, maybe we have this ahead of time so we could look at the identifiable problems, the action steps, go back and look at the data ourselves. And I guess how do we make this useful for us?
I think I can respond to that. This is really hot off the press, the whole strategic plan and how we've arranged it. I know you worked with Steve Benjamin, and you came up with the format, and then Mr. Millis and I sat down, kind of tried to put some structure to it, and then we asked each of the cabinet members who have some responsibility for that to sit down and help us actually populate those action steps. And so that was completed last week, and then Dr. Borf said, you know, we need to pull those action steps together to get them to the board. And my first response was, I'm going back to the strategic plan. That's where everything begins and ends, is with that strategic plan. And so I did just put that together today. But our thinking
now,
is...
I want to add also, our last CPAS conversation was just yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying to give it to you.
I'm not trying to fault anything.
But
I'm just trying
here's
to look at ways to help.
how I envision this happening for you in the future is that when we collect our data, we will populate a district report that will have the district-wide scores on it and the district-wide issues and responses. Each individual school then will do that for their building. So Charles, for instance, will say, this is where Charles students' reading is at. Here are some things that we've seen with the data, and here are some action steps we're going to take. And so you will have that for each building. And I think that will, number one, link everything directly back to the strategic plan, and number two, help you to kind of sift the data into its individual schools. So
We've tried to process some of the questions you had. I don't know if it was the last time or the time before that. We've always conducted our CPAS conferences with the schools and extrapolated from the conferences the next steps. What Dr. Parker's talking about is letting the schools discuss the next steps. That's the information you'll get, and then our conferences will be discussing with them the next steps they've already identified, instead of
it'll speed the process.
Yeah, we think that it will be better connected for all of you, too.
So we'll be able to have time to absorb this before we come.
You'll see how the buildings responded to the same thing you're seeing.
Before we
Because
bring it here.
after she started talking in the first sentence, I was trying to figure out where she was in relation to her data, so she was already done when I figured out.
Sorry.
That's just me. I mean, so I'm just trying to make it affect, I don't want your hard work to go to waste.
Sounds like they rectified, or that you created a system that will help us going forward to be in that place that you want to be. So.
Well, and that's one thing that we know is that it's a system, and you can't always get people where you need to get them when you want to get them there. And so I don't like it that I'm here talking to you about old data. That's, we've already looked at that data, we've made some in-flight corrections, and we've moved on. The next data piece comes. We would like to get you the data pieces and the school's responses to those data pieces in a more timely fashion, so
Well,
that
I really appreciate the identified issue and the action steps. I think that's really important. I was just trying to figure out how I can be more up to speed so I can understand what you're saying.
Well, and it was a great response to what our request was. I want to point that out, because that's what we said. We said it would be helpful for us to understand, because by the time we get to the data, because presumably you guys have already moved, and so helping us understand what the movement has been is great. I like this. Aaron?
Dr. Parker, I love this myself, but I'm going to go back to the question that I had previously asked, and I'll explain why. Focus 2, target is 95% of all students demonstrate responsible behavior on a daily basis. We had a previous discussion on this earlier, and we looked at across the board as a district, we're looking at 98.54%. So we're above that. Mm-hmm. Our concern, mine, gets to be, again, for one school in particular said, less than 10 students who are identified as the problem there. My previous question had been, what type of support? I'm specifically asking what type of remediation is being done, or what form of remediation, how is this student being handled to ensure that the behavior issue, it's not about setting them aside, but what type of intervention is being given to that student to ensure that the problem, the behavioral problem, gets eradicated, not just put to dormancy and resurfaces sometime later, but it's put to rest. Because above that focus area, it goes to the graduation rate. Okay, and if we're looking at the elementary school, that the behavior issue of 10, and that's just in one elementary school, by the time they get to high school, if these things are still going on, then that's where we're losing students. So my question is, and I don't mean to put you on that spot,
I can
Dr.
answer that.
Parker. I knew that if it was a question to you or Bob, I knew that you all had answers for it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, for the most part, in all of our buildings, we rely on positive behavior interventions and supports to shape behavior. So the first thing that we do, and that's what we've talked about they're going to do at Vail, we have to go back to the beginning because we have new teachers there. And so this common understanding of what constitutes an office referral, they don't have that common understanding yet because you have teachers coming from two different buildings. So they need to go back and revisit that. What is our what are our expectations in this building? What things will a teacher do to intervene before a student's sent to the office? And then those are all tier 1, and we of course have the second steps social skills curriculum that we use with all of our students. And then we have tier 2, students who have identified needs receive small group interventions. It could be the Steps to Respect program, it could be small group counseling. So those things are all in place. And then, of course, Tier 3 is when we move into more significant interventions. So we might do some outside of school counseling, get students hooked up with some outside wraparound type services. But in this particular instance, and this was a rare occurrence, it was just a sort of a critical mass, a large number of students who were all demonstrating these significant problems kind of at the same time. And we do have another intervention in place. We could have taken all those kids up and moved them to community youth services. But it seemed like sort of a knee-jerk reaction. We wanted to try to build some things in place there. And so we brought over a teacher who, number one, has training in teaching reading and can teach the reading to them in a way that they'll be successful. But two, has also received some additional training in providing some social skills intervention and training in how kids learn to interact in a bigger setting. And so, I mean, we have kids from kindergarten through 4th grade in these groups. It's not just one grade level. So some of those students may eventually end up at community youth services. It just may happen that that's what we do. But the goal is to get as many of those students back on track and back in their regular classrooms.
Thank you. You answered my question, but I think the public probably, the public needs to hear that, because if the perception is out there that, we have student behavior problems that are running rampant throughout all our buildings, again, the simple fact is that 98.54% of our students are not demonstrating negative behavior, but are demonstrating positive behavior on a day-to-day basis. It's just that we have a small group of individuals who are creating those concerns, but then there is something in place, that the tiers and everything else that is working on a daily basis to eradicate the problem. So.
Yes, sir.
And I can also guarantee you we're not unique in that. Around the county, I can guarantee wherever kids come together in a building, you're going to have a behavior problem now and then. It's just that a lot of schools don't have public meetings in the television land to talk about those situations.
The public thinks that we're the only school corporation in eastern Indiana, specifically Wayne County, that has any behavioral issue problems with students. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Park. We're going to move on to our opportunities with the Chinese partnership.
Oh, sure. Last week we had a dozen Chinese educators with us, and most of them were principals, elementary and intermediate school principals. They spent 2 days with us, and one of them signed an agreement or a memorandum of understanding, or is underway, signing a memorandum of understanding with Mrs. Andrews, who's in the audience, to make Charles a sister school to one of our Chinese schools that were represented by a principal here. Hibbard signed a similar agreement a couple weeks ago. But what's kind of exciting would be some of the possibilities that have been discussed with the coordinator of this visit, who has asked us to think about accepting some students as early as next fall to join Richmond High School. These would be students, seniors, who would come over and spend the entire year, and we're talking about could be as many as 25. There are also some possibilities down the road from there that they would like to discuss with us, and I'm wanting to simply start the conversation about what that would look like, what we need to be putting in place. I think that there are advantages to be gained by the Chinese students, but there are also some nice features to be gained by our students as well. And there could be, down the road, some exchange possibilities, or at least some excursions to China for some of our teachers and even students. But in the meantime, we're going to be in some serious conversations, as conversations have begun at the high school, about what that looks like to prepare our students and teachers and families and community for as many as 25 or so Chinese students. These students would be recruited. There would be some hefty requirements for them to be accepted into this program. One would be a GPA that would be 3.5 or higher. This would also be having proficiency in English language. There are several opportunities. I mean, these students are all very academically motivated. I've talked to you before about what I've seen in Chinese classrooms about their focus on academic results. But the Chinese who have observed us know that they have a lot to learn about the discovery method, about inquiry method, about creativity. I don't know who the science teacher was responsible for this, but in Richmond High School, as you go into the cafeteria area, into the Career Center area, there are periodic charts that are attached to the wall. And what these periodic charts are a takeoff of the tables, but they've taken other topics like cars or jobs, and they've created periodic charts using that as a metaphor to talk about relationships between the cars or the jobs and so on. The Chinese principals took photo after photo after photo of that, because that's the kind of academic application that doesn't go on a daily basis that they can learn from us. So they're excited about the possibilities as well, and we'll be talking more and more. There are some camps that are going to be made available to our students and our teachers for the summer that would prepare some of them for some of these experiences. The conversations have only begun, and there has been no agreement yet, but I was in touch with the coordinator of the Chinese program just yesterday, and I told her that I would be mentioning this in public and that I would just like to know if she's still comfortable with that, and she said she is absolutely comfortable. At the end of our conversation, the first one where we talked about this, I asked her what the next step would be. And she told me at that point, the next step is to say yes. And I said, well, I'm not at that point yet, but we have other conversations that take place, but it's an exciting possibility that we would be joined by 25 students who are very excited about Richmond High School. I also have to tell you one other thing. We don't always see what's right in front of us. The comment that just really struck me was when I asked why Richmond High School as opposed to other schools around the state, because we would be the first one that they do this kind of program with. One of the comments was, we've been through Richmond High School, we've talked to the people who are there, we're impressed by the people who actually graduated from Richmond High School, who came back to give back to their community by actually working with kids. And she said, basically, this place has heart. That's not a typical descriptor, and I thought that was noteworthy. So I'm glad to be able to share that.
Yeah.
I'll be sharing a lot more as time goes on.
Have you had any discussion as to where they would be housed or how they would be housed? Would it be like your typical foreign exchange student where you go with a host family?
In the first year, they would probably be looking for host families, and whether that's an absolute requirement, I'm not sure yet, but at least in the first year, that's what they're talking about.
So you're not that far into
We are
the
not.
conversations yet?
We are not.
Dixie?
Will we have to hire additional staff? How will this impact our AP classes for our kids?
It would be an additional student group to populate our AP classes. Some of our AP classes, though not all of them, some of our AP classes are rather sparsely populated to begin with, and we have to entice students to enroll in those. Others, it would probably be a challenge, and we may have to look at scheduling as an issue. But these students would bring with them a financial piece as well that could
Yeah, that
make it
was my
possible to.
Next question.
Yeah, we couldn't hire too many. We probably couldn't hire more than 1 or 2 teachers if we had 25, but that could make it possible. But some scheduling could also make some interesting possibilities. I met with the AP teachers yesterday, and Dr. Kimball is also here. She joined me in meeting with them, and that was one of their concerns. But to show you why this would be a good problem, We just signed on with the University of Notre Dame last week to, in fact, Dr. Kim, why don't you come up? This is an important piece. You were instrumental in making this happen. We have created incentives for our teachers and students to populate those classes. You want to talk to them a little bit about that grant?
It's called the APTIP-IN grant. That stands for AP for Advanced Placement, TIP is Training Program, and IN is Indiana. We were one of the schools chosen to receive the grant. We just received notice of that last Wednesday. Notre Dame came to us and spent the day with us. It was pretty exciting. What it constitutes is they're asking us to add some additional AP classes in science, math, and English because it's part of the STEM, and also it came out of Race to the Top funds. So thought that was interesting. So we met today. Yeah.
I'll show you.
So we met today, the AP staff with Joe Spicer and Ray Wolpe. They were both kind of leading this. So we're right now thinking that we're going to be adding an environmental science AP, which would be for a lower level rather than, like 9th and 10th graders, rather than waiting till junior or senior year to get these. They want to add, we have English literature, they want to have us add English language, which would be the writing and the grammar. They want to add an AP bio class, and we were talking about how we could integrate that backwards into 8th grade so that the students might even be taking honors bio in 8th grade so they can take AP bio as a freshman. It changes the whole face of what we're going to be able to provide. In fact, Mrs. Wolpe wants to call it the AP Academy, house it in one section, and it would absolutely, without a doubt, put Richmond High School on the map in the state of Indiana. We're looking at adding so many so that they could graduate with like 8 or more APs,
Wow.
which makes us more competitive with East Coast private high schools, et cetera. So this is really, really big. They want to add AP Computer Science as a class.
Wow.
And one other one,
We haven't
AP
gotten
Bio.
a grant.
I think it was 5 total. And so they're asking us to add that. When they do add it, and then also in addition to what we already offer, each student who scores a 3, 4, or 5 on any AP test gets $100, and a check is written by the University of Notre Dame. So if a student takes 8 AP classes, they're going to make $800 if their scores are 3, 4, or 5. Each teacher who's a teacher of AP gets $100 for every student in their class that scores a 3, 4, or 5.
Wow.
So in the case of Mr. Schroeder, who has
AP Calculus?
yes, he has AP Calc, and he had roughly 20 who got the scores 3, 4, or 5. So he would get $2,000 for that, plus he would get $500 as a stipend for being an AP teacher, plus if he exceeds his goal, then he gets a $1,000 bonus. And this is all from this grant from the University of Notre Dame,
Does the
who's
grant-
running the grant.
Does the grant pay the cost for the parent, for the family?
Yes, they pay for the tests. Yep.
Because that's like
They
a
also
$300 or
pay for the
$400
training, and this is, to me, one of the most exciting parts, because each of these new and old AP teachers will be sent this summer to Indianapolis for a week-long training. Notre Dame pays for it. They get housing, food, and the workshop for a week. And then the other exciting part is, she just told me yesterday that we get 10 spots to send pre-AP from the lower grades, 6 through 8. So we're looking for 10, 6 through 8, pre-honor type staff members
very
from
exciting,
the middle school.
isn't it?
And they get the free training, and this is 3 years in a row. So after 3 years, our staff is going to be trained like to the moon. It's really going to be outstanding.
How do
And it's going to
teachers
be very,
get
very,
to
very
do
strong AP.
So how do
So-
teachers get to be selected? You're going to go back to work, I can tell.
Yeah, there you go. It's really exciting, and it's a done deal. It's absolute, and Notre Dame will write the check to the student. So in June, if they have their score, they get a check from Notre Dame. The teachers get a check from Notre Dame.
Does this begin with
Pardon me?
does this
Fall.
begin next fall?
It begins, we tell them immediately, and they start this summer with the training, and then the classes next fall. It's a done deal. We've got it. We're in.
Congratulations.
It's really exciting.
It's very exciting.
Pretty fun.
So how many AP classes do we have right now?
I I have the list. I have to go back and look. We have roughly.
U.S. history, econ, English.
Well, we have U.S. history, government, physics, chemistry, calculus, English literature,
Not econ?
and I think Spanish, not econ, and Spanish 5. And so we would be adding 5 to that already.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. The thing that I've been pushing for years is we need to start them sooner. We can't just wait till senior year and say, okay, everybody, you get 5 AP classes. It doesn't work that way scheduling-wise and everything. If we start them as freshman and sophomore and then junior, there's 2 more options for junior year. So it's pretty exciting. We dumped all this on Mr. Spicer today and said, put it in a program and make this happen for scheduling. So, but I mean, we even have it charted out. Like you could put AP Physics and AP Chemistry the same period because they're not going to conflict. The same 2 types of students won't take it, grade level wise. The same with you could do calculus and statistics. That's the other class. It was statistics, an AP Stat class. So
Wow.
that's going to be big. They can take AP Stat with just Algebra 2 level of math. And so if we do it in 8th grade, they're taking AP Statistics as a sophomore at Richmond High School. That is phenomenal.
So are the AP classes still going to be set up to be all 3 tries?
Yes, well, we're working on that. Like, Mrs. Thresher came up with a way that she can embed part of the AP Environmental Science in her honors chemistry, and then 1 try left over for the rest of the environmental science, same students all year.
Pat?
So it'll be a 3-try.
Karen, I'm really interested in how we can use this as leverage for marketing. So I assume Suzanne and Missy are over there working on that. Because
I know, I'm like writing like a maniac.
the first person you need to go see is Craig Kenyon at the hospital.
Right.
And I mean, seriously, we've got to leverage this information. And parents need to know too, because parents are the ones who can really begin to support and push those kids into those classes. So
The kids are so excited. I surveyed some of my kids today, and they're absolutely positively excited. By the way, I slipped in a survey for how they felt about Chinese students coming to Richmond High School. Hands down, they were thrilled to death with that possibility. I mean, to make little narratives, I brought them with me if you want to see anything, but they were like, how great that Richmond High School could become international, how great we could be as students to learn another culture. None of them were worried about the competition. They were just thrilled that they'd have that opportunity to be more global and to learn bigger and better. So I'm just driving around going, this is like the perfect storm of amazing things happening at Richmond High School. It really and truly is. I saw in my insurance agent today, and I was telling him some of it, but he was excited. I mean, the more the word
we've
gets out.
got to get the word out. That's exactly
Easy to do.
Yeah.
I think we need parent meetings, informative meetings, newsletters, everything. It can be done, but we've got some phenomenal things happening. It's going to change the face of the Richmond High School, and it's going to put us on the map, big time, for academics.
Those parent meetings will also include those intermediate parents as
Yes,
well?
because I, as part of the charge, I have to go find 10 teachers from Dennis, Test, and Hibbard to get trained this summer.
Well, and
That's pretty
and you're
exciting.
going into intermediate, then you're at
Right.
5th grade, starting to think about
Right.
later on, so that.
And if we can get some of those built down into the 8th grade level so they start ready to go as soon as we
Right.
get to high school.
That helps eliminate some of my
Lots of
concerns.
possibilities.
I was
So,
concerned with
Dixie,
slots being gone. so.
Concerning capacity,
Yeah.
we're increasing capacity to serve students.
Yeah.
Sure sounds like it.
There are right now, there are no red lights. Everybody that we've talked to, the scheduling, the staff, the teachers, they're all super excited. Green light all the way.
Thank you, Mrs. Kimball.
Oh, we're having fun.
Thank you.
Good times, yeah.
Oh, I love those kind of reports.
Well, and I hope Brian got all of them. And Karen, make sure that you.
Well, and that's not all.
Well, that needs to be separate from the board meeting. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a Sunday spread.
I think so too.
Now we're writing the paper for you too, Greg.
Why not?
Did you have anything you wanted to finish up with there?
This is an ongoing story. I'll be coming back.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We're on to action items.
Good timing.
Our donations tonight will be reviewed by Mr. Coddington for your approval.
Good evening. We ask the board tonight to accept the following donation.
Don't sound any better than you did the other night.
Wow. Had a replacement here.
From Belden to the RCS 6th grade science classrooms, donation of safety glasses. From YU to Dennis Intermediate School, a donation for recognition of Dennis staff accomplishments. To RL Vending LLC, to RHS, donation to the Student Activity Fund for assemblies. From Gladys and Leanne Buland to RHS Athletics, and Mark and Leanne Buland for a donation in memory of Charles Hilton. From Dr. William and Gail Tuttabush and Mary
Schwendenner.
Thank you, Holt. And from Robert and Jean Sickman for the RHS Athletics to donation to the Boys and Girls Swimming and Diving Camp Fund. From the Animal Hospital of Richmond, Warm Glow Candle, Barb Bergdahl, Richmond Symphony Orchestra, Webb and Associates, Richmond Baking Company, Kevin and Ray Arnett, Charles and Michelle Avery, John and Paula Worley, Richmond Music Boosters, Mark and Rhonda Dooning, Stephen Holthouse, Myers Mechanical, Healthcare Professionals Credit Union, Hills Pet Nutrition, Sherry Veach Jewelry, Stephen Bobula, Daryl and Suzanne Rawlings, Richmond Cancer and Blood Disease Center, Eastern Indiana Orthopedics, First Bank Richmond, Stoltz Family Dentistry, Belly and Sharon Combs, J.M. Hutton, Jay's Restaurant, Meyer Inc., Keith Cozart, Ed and Katie Delaney, Tate's Tots Daycare, Beaches, and Anonymous, all to Richmond Music Boosters, donation for the Uniform Fund, Music Department. And from Jim and Penny Duke to Civic Hall, proudly presenting series. We ask the board tonight to accept a very generous donation of $7,485.92.
So moved.
Aaron Stevens makes the motion, and Suzanne Darengowski seconds the motion. Other than thank you, do we have any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Again, thank you for all those donations.
The second action item is for additional accounts payable, and if Mr. Coddington were talking, he would tell you that due to the early board meeting in December, he wanted permission to do an additional accounts payable docket. The docket would be approved by the board at the 1st January 2013 meeting, and what this does, it allows RCS to pay the vendors in a timely manner and better reflect the 2012 expenses.
So move.
Pat Heine makes the motion, and Dixie Robinson seconds the motion. Are there comments and questions on the additional accounts payable docket? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
And on 5.03, the Rainy Day Fund, Mr. Coddington is asking for permission to transfer general fund cash balance at the end of the year to the Rainy Day Fund, and he plans to bring the resolution to the January board meeting with the exact amount of the transfer after all the 2012 payrolls and accounts payable have been completed.
Do I hear a motion? Pat Heine makes the motion, and Linda Morgeson seconds the motion. Are there comments and questions on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Our next item for approval is the recommendation to approve an alternative education grant proposal to benefit the Wernley Home Detention Center. And to tell you a little more about that recommendation is Pam Hilligoss, who is our connection there for alternative ed and the Wernley Home.
Wernley Children's Home will be opening a detention center on January 1st, and we will be sending a half-time teacher there to service the students who will be incarcerated. And I have written an alternative education grant to help support the funding of that particular program, and at this time we will be servicing those students 3 hours per day.
So you need a motion before the questions?
Do I hear a motion to accept
So
the
moved.
alternative education program proposal? Pat Heine makes the motion, Dick C. Robinson seconds the motion. Comments and questions?
My question was about, you now service some Wernley Home students at the community youth services. Will that impact the number that you have there? Will those stay at Wernley? I didn't quite understand that.
This is a new opportunity for us. We actually serve students at community services. We actually currently serve students on grounds at Wernley Children's Home. This is an additional half FTE.
Okay.
Other
Wasn't clear.
questions?
Thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Hilligoss.
We have an abstention as well.
Aha. Okay, so Suzanne Darengowski abstains. And she told me that ahead of time.
Next item is next year's school calendar, and Mrs. Stewart is here to present that tonight for your approval. We've talked about it. We've even had further community or school input, and she can tell you a little bit about that.
It is a traditional calendar for the most part, a little bit earlier start date. The month of October is different in that there's just 1 week of class altering with conferences and the fall break during the same week. There is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That's a day off proposed for next year. And then the 2 weeks at Christmas that we heard loud and clear from anybody who we would listen to. They let us know that that was important. And when we did look at the balance calendar at 2 weeks off in the fall and 2 weeks off in the spring, that 2 weeks off in the spring put us off 2 weeks just before the spring ISTEP. So we moved away from that. And then snow days are built in. We have 4, maybe 3, with Martin Luther King Day and President's Day used for snow makeup days if necessary. And we have 180 student days, 186 teacher days. And I thank the teachers on the committee. I don't have their names in front of me, but I'll try it here. Penny Shank, Mindy Jackson-Wampler, Rhonda Reinhardt, Glenn Reed, Jeff Thorne was on the committee, Tammy Rhodes, and Nicole Vandervoort from TEST.
We also posted it to the web last week and received feedback from the staff. We didn't have a lot of feedback, which could be a testimony to how well the committee communicated back to teachers, but we also didn't receive too many from the community either. So,
Do you know if this matches up sort of, I mean, I know you can't do it exact, but with the county schools? The other-
They don't have theirs completed yet.
Oh, okay,
they've been waiting for us to finish ours.
okay,
Northeastern will do a calendar very, very similar to this one.
okay.
Hagerstown will still go with
Yeah,
the
they're on the other.
Newcastle calendar, and that's a balanced calendar, and I still don't know what Connorsville will be approving.
Or Centerville.
That impacts
Well,
Centerville.
Connorsville, whatever they approve will be what Centerville will
Okay.
tend to, because the Career
Right,
Center
Career
there
Center.
dictates some of what Centerville does. But from what I understand, it's still fairly much a traditional calendar.
Okay.
They may call it a little different in some of the different vacations, but it's still pretty traditional.
I'll go ahead and get the motion before we have questions. Do I hear a motion to accept the school calendar as presented? Aaron Stevens makes the motion, and Linda Morgeson seconds the motion. Now, comments and questions. Jeff?
Yeah, I've got the email when you put it on the website for comments, and I probably should have went ahead and commented online, but one of the things that I was looking at is, since we're trimesters, would we be possibly next year maybe to look at, the parent-teacher conference has always been something that I've kind of paid attention to, and I don't know why, but just, I've looked at 5 different versions of this up to this date, but I was thinking, would we be better off maybe to try to go towards having parent-teacher conferences 3 times a year at 6 weeks into each of the trimesters, so they're kind of middle of each trimester, because the way the coordination of the way the parent-teacher conference is now, I mean, the timing is just shortly after the first trimester, but then the second's kind of bypassed, and I didn't know if we want to work with getting our parents more involved with the students and trying to keep our kids on track. I didn't know if that was an idea that was feasible that maybe we could work towards or look at next year. I don't know. I don't know how that would play into the calendar, and I know you've already thrown the pass, and now I'm bringing this up, but I would.
We can raise that question, especially in discussion, and put that question out to parents this year. I mean, would an additional time for parent-teacher conferences be helpful? I think there are a lot of ways we can frame that question, but the conversation ought to begin now anyway, even if we're not doing it for this coming calendar.
I just think if we did it at the end of the first 6 weeks, then we maybe will have time to get in each of the trimesters, since many of them change classes completely each trimester. You know, that would get the opportunity at 6 weeks for that teacher to attempt to get that parent into the classroom or into the room for discussion anyway.
I will tell you, these are formal parent-teacher conference dates, but I can't imagine there's a teacher here in the system who will tell you, I haven't talked to parents outside the parent-teacher conference date. A lot of parents are contacted or contact throughout the year. But your question is a good one, and had we were so focused on the balance versus the traditional and minding what's happening in the district, that conversation, I don't believe, came up.
No.
About adding another.
No, the one conversation about conferences was, let's have them all on one day for everybody, from 12 to 9. Ouch. That came up. And we moved away from that.
It's always been an issue. I mean, it's when do you have them? Do you have them from 3:30 to 5, and do you have them at night? I mean, it's always been an issue, and each building treats it differently. But I think I just was thinking that would be a good way to, change our thought.
Mm-hmm.
We will we'll include that in some conversation.
Other comments and questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Next item is permission to advertise notice of a public hearing for superintendent stipend. The board approved stipends for employees, but it's not enough to approve a stipend for the superintendent. You also have to go through a hearing now. This is recently enacted legislation. And we talked about this last summer when we went through the hearing on my contract. Whenever you issue a stipend that's not set out in the contract, or a raise that's not set out in the contract, you have to have a hearing. So this simply puts in motion the same sequence of events that we saw play out in June.
Do I hear a motion? Dixie Robinson makes the motion, and Linda Morrison seconds the motion. Are there comments and questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we're going to move on to our master plan and a projects update.
And we have Mr. Mays with us to talk about our projects update. He even has some visual aids here.
Pictures.
Okay. Turn the lights down.
Turn the lights down. There we go.
Thank you for giving me the time to show you what we've been doing the last several weeks. Our first project that's up is the Hibbard Ron Robinson Memorial. And as you can see that we have the structure up. The front doors or the south end entrance has been closed for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. And we do have the structure up. This is a side angle to show you that the this is where the glass entry will be, and the doors right in here, and this area out here will all be a undercover entrance for the students to gather. They're starting to put the columns up and brick, and today we had 10 people there working in such a tight area, and that we're planning on being done in 3 weeks when the students come back from winter break. We have all the contracts now let, people that are donating time, material, and everybody's in line, and we're ready to finish it out.
You want to talk about the contrasting brick, the fact that we have contrasting brick?
I'm sorry?
Would you talk about the contrasting brick?
We have contrasting
Oh, yes,
brick.
yes. It's really hard to tell from this picture, but we couldn't match this brick right here. So that we do have a contrasting brick, which is it's an off-white, and that as those columns go up, and it's similar to what we show on the rendering, and then we have a let me go back here a second. Right along this edge.
There it is.
There we go. Right along this edge right here, there'll be a retaining wall with 2 pillars there for the rendering. And that'll be like a red brick. And then we'll take that red brick and put it, wrap it around the white brick in 2 different rows to kind of bring in the red and white. And that's what we've tried to do at Hibbard with the basketball floor and everything. Rather than trying to match what's there, we're better off to go completely different than what's there. And then the pavers will be red, and we've got some, I'm not going to tell you about it, I'm not going to let Jeff tell you about it either. He's got some unique lighting that we're going to have at nighttime on the walls and the flag, and it's going to really be first class when we get done. Okay, this is Dennis. You know, if you stand around over there, you get covered up. I mean, they are moving fast. What I would like to show you, this picture right here is standing from the parking lot looking north, and it's the overall view, and you can see that we have 3 walls up. The one on the north and the one on your left is up with the brick on the back side, and we'll see that in a minute. And then the one on the right is the wall that actually separates us from the existing building. By the middle of next week, the big opening that you see there will have a wall up. This picture kind of shows, if you see some pattern in the block, that's a sound block that have slits in the block to pick up so that the noise doesn't bounce off the wall. The wall absorbs it, so you don't get a lot of echoing, and we have that all the way around. Again, this is the connection. Let me show. Yeah, this is the connection between the new building and the old building, and we'll build a lower wall in there to connect the two. But this is the east end of the gym, and that's what they're putting up now, and that'll be up by probably tomorrow. They have 10 men working on that wall right now, and what this picture shows is that we have already poured the concrete floor, and that the opening there, the big opening, is the entrance going into the dentist hallway and into the existing building. Now, the advantage of pouring that floor as quick as we did was that we didn't allow the equipment in there to churn up the mud and the dirt and everything. So we poured it quick, and now they're able to run their equipment on it and do whatever they have to without trying to dry it out. And in the wintertime construction, once you get the roof on the building, and if you have a lot of water in the floor, it's almost impossible to dry it out. You have to use a lot of big heaters. This is the wall that Dixie looks at, because it's pretty close to her house, and it's all brick. This is the west wall, and then the north wall, and that's all done. They're just waiting to wash the brick to take all the scaffolding down. Now, to give you an idea of what's going to happen is that because we have students in the school, and that the structure, when it comes, we cannot put the structure up with the students there, because we have to use the parking lot where the buses are to set the steel up and the cranes. So they're coming. They're starting the day after Christmas. They're working all the way through, if they have to, even on Sunday before New Year's, and that they will work all day before New Year's, so that Wednesday they're done. The steel structure will be up, both on the main part of the gym and the backside next to the existing building. And the question came up today, well, how do you do that? Well, we have a ½ tolerance between the backside of the column and the existing wall, and it just kind of slips right in there with the walls up. So what's happened by doing that, we've picked up 3 weeks. They were going to do that towards the end of January, and so we picked up 3 weeks. And what it means in the wintertime is that by the 11th of January, we'll have the roof on it. Then we don't care what the weatherman does, that they can work all winter and keep up that 3 weeks that we have. Also, during the winter break, in the existing building, we're going to tear out ceilings. We're going to install new hot water piping. We're going to run new electrical from an existing mechanical room in the main building through the hallways into this area, and we're going to build new bulkheads and ceilings around the old gym area, and then the hallway that we just completed for the cafeteria. And that'll be done also the week of Christmas, so that we are 3 weeks ahead of time, and that we were to be completed April the 5th, and so I'm shooting for September 1st to be done, so because they need the room desperately, and they're all excited over there, and so we're trying to keep up with their enthusiasm.
When are you looking to be completed by?
I'm sorry?
You said September.
What month was completion?
We had April the 5th, which was right after spring break. Now you can back off 3 weeks, and I'm hoping around the 1st of March.
Okay, 1st of March, all right. Because you said September.
You said September first, and
I wanted it to go the other way.
He's thinking of another project.
But this is a fun project to watch going up,
That's
because they are working as quick as they can on the weather. Their philosophy is they're going to work 5 days. If we get rain on Thursday, they're going to work on Saturday. So they will work 5 days a week to get the job done.
Now, when you were talking about the piping and all that, the most noticeable impact on the cafeteria will be the removal of that great big system that's in the ceiling. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. And putting that ceiling back in, and we're one light fixture that we have to install in there also to complete that space.
Thank you, Mr. Mace.
Thank you.
Now we're on to our work session.
We are on to our work session, which has to do with the establishment of an education foundation, and Misty.
I've not been called Dixie before. I've been called Wendy and Mitzi and Amy. And
sorry about that. I was looking at Dixie and just called you that. But Misty Hollis has been working with a few individuals to put this together, and so I turn it over to her.
Thank you, Dr. Bohr. During the last 4 years as the project director for Safe Schools, Healthy Students, there's been ongoing conversations with you as a board of directors, in the community, and even sleepless nights for me of sustainability, that and not just with Safe Schools Healthy Students, but we actually are a very aggressive district when it comes to grants. And so what does sustainability look like? How can our needs that you as a board set out for our students and for our families be met? So there have been several discussions that have happened probably in the last couple years. I've heard hall talk or talk after meetings or even brainstorming every once in a while with me and planting the seed of creating an education foundation for Richmond Community Schools. And so actually my partner in crime back here, Karen, and I, when we were writing Race to the Top, this was kind of a side little brainstorm that started, and I decided to give a proposal to Dr. Borf about moving us forward or talking to you about a proposal for creating an opportunity for our future. And that would be with the possibility of creating a Richmond Community Schools Education Foundation. So I'm going to walk through. It's a very brief proposal. I have given you a copy of that proposal in front of you, but I just want to talk about a few little facts as we begin this discussion tonight. We know, and this isn't anything new, that our community faces budget constraints. Not just the school district, but our local government faces budget constraints. We have a drop in our population for the city of Richmond. Thus, and I do believe this, that also has affected our enrollment for our community school. And then we also have an increase of competition that has been presented to us as a school corporation. So that has really forced us to and encouraged us to look at what are some other opportunities that we can look at for giving for our school district and for our students. The National School Foundation Association, which I learned existed as I started doing the research, I presented to you, I think last week, a really nice write-up about the importance and opportunities that are presented to public school education foundations. And so really this statement comes from them that we are just in a time now, never before have we seen this, that we are in such conditions that we have added pressures to our public schools and we have reduced state support. And creating a local school foundation just might provide that financial assistance to improve our education at a local level that we have control of. There's a book that Stan Levinson has written, and I have not read it. I've read some snippets of it online, but I am interested in getting this, that talks about big-time fundraising for today's schools. This isn't anything new. Our colleges do this. Our colleges have been very aggressive about creating foundations. Let's look at a local organization that has done a great job with this, is Reed Hospital. They created their own foundation. And so this isn't anything really new for what we're presenting to you tonight. I thought for Indiana we would be a little bit ahead of the curve, and when I started looking into it, really there are a great number of schools in the state of Indiana that have already moved this forward. So we would not be the first, we wouldn't be the second, we'd probably be between 70 and 80 of the schools that would be setting up a foundation if this is what we wanted to do. But public schools have the opportunity today to do the same that we look at our higher education institutions that have done. So just a few things I want to talk about of why. Why would we want to do this? A foundation, and we need to remember that would be a separate organization. Legally, it has to be a separate organization from Richmond Community Schools. It would be a separate 501c3. It would have a separate board of directors. We are encouraged through research that I've done that superintendent would serve on that board, and there would probably be 1 or 2 board members that would serve on that board. But there would be a separate board of directors that would operate the foundation and operate the staff associated with that. The foundation's focus would solely be about raising dollars for Richmond Community Schools and the needs that Richmond Community Schools has. So the foundation would handle those major gifts. The foundation would handle any special events or fundraising that would happen. We are very limited as a school district on the type of special events or the fundraising events that we can do and how we pay for those. The foundation would be a great tool for us to use to make that happen. The distribution of our funds are prioritized. We would be in control of how those funds are distributed and if they are meeting the specific goals and the missions set by this board of directors, because you are Richmond Community Schools. The distribution would be done through grants. So we would have, whether it's the teachers that are writing a grant or a department of the school writing a grant or parents writing a grant for a department of the school, it would be done by the distribution would be done by grants. The overall coordination of fundraising, it would be a very concerted effort. It would be a planned effort. It would be concentrated effort in what we're doing for our school system. And then we would also look at possibly in-service training to help our staff and our volunteers to learn how to be a part of raising dollars. I gave an example today of with a staff, Kathy Parker could be having lunch with a former Richmond High School alumni or somebody who used to live here and used to call Richmond home. Well, we want her to have the tools to be able to say, hey, have you thought about giving to Richmond Community Schools? And be able to help her know how to funnel that through our school system. I also want to make sure that we understand this is not about a certain grade or a certain level. This is about our pre-K to 12 education for our school system. We're not talking about just middle school or elementary or high school. It's specific to all grades. And New Jersey School Board Association did research of all of their education foundations in the state. And in that survey, they asked, what has your school district benefited the most from in having the education foundation? And these were the specific points that came out of their research. Innovation and teacher mini grants. The school districts were saying that was very helpful to them, that teachers could do research and have assistance in their classroom through additional funding. The enrichment and culture arts activities. We are such a privileged school district, and you have really held on to the importance of arts and keeping arts in our schools when others have tried to push that away. But we've not done that here. Having a foundation, and we think long term, this hopefully would enrich and make sure that we have support for those initiatives in our school district. Equipment or facilities, all of the information I've looked at says that foundations really do help with our community relations in the community. We're able to funnel some marketing ideas and marketing efforts through the foundation. And then technology. Technology has been supported through other foundations as well. So what are some resources that exist? That was one of the things that Dr. Borf asked when I met with him. You know, are we out there all alone? No, we're not. There's a National School Foundation Association that supports all national education foundations across the United States. It just so happens that they are having their national conference, and Pat's the one who found this out, having their national conference in Indianapolis in April. The Indiana Association of Public Education Foundations exists here in Indiana and supports the local foundations in our state. They had their conference in March, so they have an ongoing training and communication supports for foundations. We have a great tool here with our community foundation. Steve Borchers, the director of the foundation, has met with Pat, I know, and talked to her several times. I've had some conversations, Suzanne has. There's just been some conversations from their end of possible support there. And then I've never called a school that has turned away an opportunity to assist. And there's over 70, between 60 to 70 Indiana school corporations that have foundations. So I know that if I picked up the phone or one of you picked up the phone to call, they would be willing to help us and walk us through their speed bumps that they had as the foundation was created. So we have a really nice resources in place for us as we move forward, if we so do. So just quickly, if we move forward, what might those next steps look like? Well, we really want to take probably the next month and have some further conversations with our partners. We would like to spend some time with our Alumni Association, spend time with our Wayne County Foundation, talk about what this looks like and how we might want to move forward, making sure that all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed and relationships are in place. We would need to establish a board of directors, and these aren't in complete order from after the further discussions, but those next bullet points aren't in a specific order. But establish a board of directors. We would need to ensure that our vision and mission of the purpose of the foundation aligns with what our goals are here that you've passed as a corporation. And then the establishment of 501c3, and if personnel is going to be hired, that board of directors would be the one to hire that personnel. And then once all that's in place, there would need to be to finalize a strategic plan for the foundation, clarify their scope of education they're going to serve when they make contributions out, identify donors, and set goals. What I would say is that this really is not something that we're going to see benefits from right away. This is really you as a board, the administration, planting a seed that we probably won't see results from for quite a while. But it has to start somewhere, and it has to start sometime. And I'm happy to be able to bring this conversation to you tonight. I did, Mary Lou Griffey with the Alumni Association did email over just the history of the Alumni Association. I want to make sure you had that because we want to make sure they're a partner as we move forward together. So is there, I want to open this up, and I'll try to answer the best I can.
The salary of the director, who will be paying for that?
That would be the nonprofit 501c3 foundation. We can't, by law, the school corporation cannot have an employee that is a part of that. Now, if the school corporation would like to seed money to the foundation or write a mini grant of themselves or to help get some things started, the corporation can so do that.
I will make no bones about it. I've been thinking about a foundation for a long, long, long time. And you know those 5K races we used to have at the National School Board Association? They were always supported by and run by this. I happen to have a somewhat of close contact in the Carmel Clay Foundation. My sister is the co-director there, and she was on the board first, and she's there. And she says, we have the best of all worlds. We have an alumni association that handles scholarships. My sister would like to swirl off, move off the scholarships to an entity that just focuses on scholarship. And they have given really interesting, creative, innovative grants, especially for teachers and student groups and all sorts of things. It's a very, very exciting possibility for enhancing and leveraging. And when I talked to Steve Borchers, and my sister, Stephanie, was telling me also that you need to have a permanent endowed fund, usually in a community foundation, which gives you a regular distribution, and then there is more cash flow that you generate to pay for the director and whatever else that you need to do. But there are very active foundations around the state. And for example, the Penn Mishawaka Foundation supports all of their Challenge Day activities and all of the things that come out of that. So there are lots of opportunities here for direct student and direct teacher support that we can't do otherwise. So I just get excited about it, as you can tell. I'd vote for it tonight, but I know we can't do that. Sorry.
Well, and I was going to say, too, that I attended at the National School Board Association, I attended a presentation on school foundation at Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Right.
And we discussed that there at the meeting that they had. It was unbelievable how many things that they could support for kids through that foundation, and what good community relations it built with the school. So I tried to find the printout that I had of that, and it's somewhere. So I will get it to you when I find it.
Well, would this foundation just be for Richmond Community Schools?
It's a separate 501c3.
Yeah, it would be a separate 501c3, and obviously the board would need to work closely with y'all and superintendent on its its mission and purpose. Not to say that there couldn't be some, if there's a grant writing opportunity that the director of personnel has, maybe it could be a partnership in other ways. But as far as the dollars that would be raised and distributed, I would see that solely being dedicated to Richmond Community Schools.
Okay. Aaron?
Misty, are there any barriers to this getting done?
A time? I mean,
it's
the
a great
barriers-
opportunity. I'm just wondering, are there any
Enough
immediate
seed
barriers?
money, enough seed money to
Well,
really make a difference, because
Yeah.
the permanently endowed fund, in order to generate a distribution
Right.
that works, needs to have about 20 times the amount that you'd really like
I
to
mean, the reason
use.
that I'm allowed to spend time at this point is because we consider it a sustainability component of Safe Schools, Healthy Students. So right now, with the time we have left of the grant, that it makes sense that I can focus some time in this direction. And so to answer your question on barriers, I guess that would be a question I'm going to redirect to you on what you think those barriers might be. For me, for what I've seen and the conversations and the research I've done, I just don't.
Yeah.
I think it's the right thing to do for our school corporation. I do want to make sure that people that those partners that we need to talk to and sit down with and walk through what this might look like for them, we need to do that.
Jeff was next, I think.
I don't know much about the foundation, so I guess I have three questions. One is since this is a separate entity, is this something that the board really has to vote on? I mean, I don't know. Since there's a separation of.
I don't believe so. I don't think you have to vote on this.
And that kind of frames a different way about how we approach this, because if this is not in our responsibility, asking for the partnership is that's differently. As I read the information that, I don't know where it came from in the update, it talked about the average funds was 0.3% of the general fund, which we're talking basically, $100,000 a year. So we're, so if that's what we want to be able to contribute a year, 100,000, you're saying 20 times that. That's a pretty big. But the thing that bothered me the most, and I like the sound of it, but as I was reading it, the way the bylaws and the way the process would be set up is there was one of the ways that could fund this was, and I don't know whether it's eligible in the state of Indiana or not, because I'm not sure where the document came from that I read, but talked about the fact that it could also be funded from property tax. I read a little blurb in there that there's as you go through, there's several different ways of funding this. So I guess I would be interested, and I'm interested in supporting it because the Wayne County Foundation does a great job. I think the alumni, there's tons of scholarships that hit the high school, and Earlham College has done tremendous things over there by having the support of their alumni and asking people to come back and donate. So I think there's some positives, but if I read the bylaws and the way this corporation is set up, I don't know that I would want to go to the route that part of the funding comes going back to the taxpayers and saying that we want this possibly to be one of the funding streams. So I don't know.
I'm not sure how that could even work.
I don't, that's not legal. And Steve Borchers was really concerned that he thought maybe in Indiana we could get money from another public entity, but not from a school system. He knew that directly. And
Well,
so
it was
he's
in the, it was
doing
in,
some
I
research.
should have highlighted it and brought it with me, but it was in that.
Yeah.
It just said that
document.
there might be a possibility of getting it from another public entity. It doesn't say you have to, and it
Yeah,
doesn't.
and in the state of Indiana, we might be able to get something from the city or something like that. But what my sister was saying is they try to keep it totally separate so that they have autonomy for distributing the funds and for making the selection of where the money goes. They try to support the school system, but really autonomously.
Well, I think separation is great. I support that. I was just mentioning that in my reading, that was the one concern that I had, is I don't want to go down that path, so.
Dixie?
Well, also, and I don't know how much you've talked to the Alumni Association, but I certainly hope that they are willing partners in this, because when they started the scholarship funds, they've done an amazing job of getting money for our kids. They went out and got some big contributors, former alumni and what have you, that contributed to all that. And I don't want to be stepping on their toes for the job that they've done. So I hope
Absolutely,
they're...
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's been little conversations with Mary Lou, and I think that's why that first step is pretty critical, is for us to be able in the next month to sit down and talk about how that might look, because you're right. We don't want to interfere with relationships established already, and
Right.
we want to make sure that we honor that as we move forward. It is two separate missions.
Yep.
It clearly is. I mean, they are doing scholarships. That is not what I would recommend us to do at all. I would recommend us to stay focused on what your mission is as a school board and supporting that. But we do need to make sure that those conversations take place, and that's why that first recommendation is this next month, just gathering more information for Dr. Bohr.
Linda, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to go back to the salary and the how that works. I understand you establish a 501c3, and it kind of has those happening at the same time, hiring the personnel and establishing that. But how do you ensure that there's enough funding to be able to pay
Yeah.
the director?
Right, and
how-
that would be up to the board. I mean, as the board comes together, that's all going to have to be discussed.
Not our
on
board,
how-
but
Yeah,
Right.
not this board.
not this
The-
board.
The Education Foundation Board of Directors would need to start that process. I didn't want y'all all to think that, the board might decide, the board of directors for the foundation might decide we're not going to hire somebody for the first year. I mean, that might be something they decide. I don't think
That's what
that
Carmel did.
for the growth of the organization and for the growth of what we need, it would be good that it's all volunteer for here on out. I think there will need to be a time where staff is hired. There's some other possibilities there too, but I think that really does come back to that board of directors to make that decision.
So that's, okay, so the board of directors is going to be really working to set this whole thing up
Absolutely.
and
That's
to
why it's going to be pretty critical,
guide and
whoever
direct.
that initial group is, that it's well representative of and has the heart of what's best for Richmond Community Schools.
Suzanne, did you have a question?
Well, on that note, there's some possibilities for some of the seed money and looking at where does that come from. And so those conversations would have to be had by the board too. It's like what our source is for startup. And they would have to have those conversations. On the other side of that, I wanted to address again the Alumni Association. I think they're a critical partner, but we have had some very preliminary conversations with board individuals, and their mission is what it is, and it's pretty solid. So they, I don't think they're conflicting. I don't think they're competing. So.
As
But
a
we would
matter-
want them-
I'm going to
we
just
would want them
reiterate
on
what
board.
my sister said. My sister said, you're blessed.
Yeah,
to
that's
have an
the way you would want it
agency."
to be, because
Yeah.
they are so different, and you wouldn't want to try to be trying to support, say, facility kinds of projects and feeling like you're maybe pulling away from scholarships. And so having those two separate, I think, is very good.
Okay, thank you, Misty.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ron, Ron.
Oh.
Had some. Ron.
I'm
wanted to
sorry,
just
Ron, I
follow
didn't see.
Suzanne, I think the missions are definitely separate, but are obviously complementary to the betterment of the interest of Richmond Community Schools in its totality. But I do think sensitivity has to be exercised that, and in fact, I was contacted by a couple of board members today from the association,
Sure.
that we don't appear to be competing
Yeah,
for a
for the
very
money.
limited pool of philanthropic dollars, at least at the local level. And I think after being sensitive to that, I think we can work through it, but it is a positive. Let's not make no mistake about it.
I think it gives us an opportunity to go way beyond the borders of the current community.
And maybe help
And
the
reach,
Alumni Association itself.
do the same. I agree. Thank you.
It's time for our press conference. None out there? Okay. We're going to move on to consent items.
Our consent items tonight include the approval of the minutes of the November 28th, 2012 board meeting and executive session, and the December 10th meeting, which was just Monday night, the work session. Recommendation by Human Resources, and I don't believe there is an addendum this evening. We also have a recommendation for accounts payable, a budget appropriations for taxing funds, recommendation to approve the Innovation Fund grant, the iSTEM grant, also filing of reports, which would be the monthly financial report. For those items, I would recommend board approval.
Do I hear a motion? Jeff Slifer makes the motion, and Aaron Stevens seconds the motion. Are there comments and questions on the consent items? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent items have been approved. Time for our second public commentary. I don't think we have anyone out there. So we'll go on to follow up on old business. We had a meeting the other night to discuss financial opportunities that will be coming up. And I guess to just continue that during old business, we need to talk about next steps, having another conversation or what the next step is.
I'd like to preface that by saying that concerns focused on the extent to which we would recommend funding for a project at Charles, recognizing that there may be some needs, but looking at the scope of those needs we were asked to do. And so we've come back tonight, and I'd like to share with you what our recommendation might look like with a scaled-back version of what we would dedicate to Charles. And let me get... I'm not sure if this is the one. We have two of them. I'll know in just a second. This is it. If you recall, we had recommended that Charles be included on our specific needs set at about $1,999,000. This is $1,450,000, and I would like to show you what that contains. Okay, I've gone too far. There we are. And Mr. Mays, why don't you come up and join me? This is a scaled-back version of what we had said earlier, and what he has done, if you would bring out what you received Monday night, you'll find that he's wrapped into this even the HVAC component that was a standalone in the previous project. So go ahead and tell them what you've done on this.
Okay, basically, we were listening to what some of you were talking about on Monday, and the only way you can really scale back a project is cut square footage. So we've actually taken and putting 2 classrooms on the east end of the building.
Let's see if it's...
Yeah,
Yeah, here.
on the east end of the building, and those would be 4th grade classrooms. Then the next 4 classrooms that are hatched in, those are the ones that have not been renovated and were not renovated in the 80s, so we would renovate that. And then we would work our program around where then we would give back the art room. And so we would have one preschool, which talking with everybody felt that would work. So by having just one preschool and giving back the art room, those are the 2 classrooms that we're adding on. So that even though we are going to be gaining students, because the 4th graders that will be going into 5th graders is a smaller class than what we have coming up. In the question was, last time we have 5 first grade sections. Okay, when you put them in the 2nd grade, it only takes 4 classrooms because of the target and the cap. But then we end up with, actually it's really neat because we end up with 4 kindergarten, 4 first grade, 4 second grade, 4 third grade, and 4 fourth grade, which was what the goal was when we were working on the master plan. And so that's how, and then so we were able to roll in the HVAC system in there and some replacing the carpet in the main hallway all the way through, and basically accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. Now, the thing that we have not accomplished is there's no growth. That by eliminating the other 2 classrooms, it gave us a preschool room that we could use for preschool, but it could also then be used as a classroom in the future. So, but this plan does work.
Now, what it also does, and let me see if I may have to go back. This, you'll notice that Westview now is no longer considered a contingency project. It would be brought into the bonding projects, so it would be top priority. You recall we talked about HVAC issues there. We would be bringing that in, and still approaching the needs at Charles as we had defined, and holding that tax rate constant. But this allows a greater flexibility in our CPF by also addressing that technology at the same level as well. And we don't need to get too specific. We weren't really or too detailed tonight. I realize that this was not on the agenda. It's just an old business conversation. But I wanted you to know how we responded to your concerns, and you're now looking at a different proposal.
So, go ahead. What do you need from us this evening? More questions? When would be the very last date we could get this process started to free up folks so they could do it this summer?
What would be ideal, I think we discussed the other night, would be if we could have an authorization to move forward with a resolution for the project. But we also said that I wouldn't be bringing a recommendation tonight. Tonight
Sure.
would be the ideal. But we did talk about perhaps having an additional conversation, maybe even a work session dedicated just to this project like we did Monday night, because we weren't able to finish to everyone's satisfaction that conversation, particularly our own, since we couldn't present you an option as you were asking for. So we've presented the option. This is for your, just to digest until the next conversation, but we really need, I think, Linda, you asked for another conversation, time to have that conversation. Jeff, you did the same thing. So what I would recommend is we set aside another time, preferably before the next board meeting.
When is the first board meeting in January? Is that the first?
It's, I think
The
it's
ninth.
the 9th.
Linda?
I want to make it, well, I guess this, you asked, how we're going to proceed.
I'm often reminded of what my responsibilities are sitting in this seat on the board, especially when I might get in the weeds. And my responsibility is to set policy and the financial part of the school system. And honestly, I feel as though I am not prepared enough, informed enough. I haven't had enough time. We haven't had enough conversations to try to rush this through even by January the 9th. I just think that, I mean, this is huge. And basically, I didn't even know until I attended the meeting on Monday what the recommendations were going to be or what we were going to be asking for. We basically, our conversation was a wonderful conversation, and it was a much needed conversation, but it really didn't get to a lot of the questions that I feel need to be addressed and need to be asked. And I just feel that it's, you know, to me, we talk a lot about being competitive, and to me, being competitive it lies also within being well planned and well prepared and ensuring that we understand the direction that we want to go and that we have a lot of these questions answered. So for me, I guess I am asking that we, and you know, something else I have to say is if the projects don't get done this summer, then they don't get done this summer. I would rather be well informed and make informed decisions than to try to rush through. Because if we wanted it to be done last summer or this next summer, then we should have begun this conversation a lot further back than when we began it, which was just really this month. So I'm asking that we think about the timeline real seriously and give us enough time to have the appropriate conversations and that we are able to have discussions as people around this table to, there are two groups that are important to me, and that one group is our children and the other group are our taxpayers. And I want to make sure that I'm able to do due diligence to both of those groups. Thank you.
Jeff?
I think Monday night when because I think we kind of asked ourselves what the next steps were. From my perspective, I'm going to go with pretty much the same thing I said Monday night. For me, personally, to have the time to work on this, I'm not going to be able to until the minimum time is January 5th or something like that. And that'd be I'm pretty much done until then. I have mentioned that I want to meet with Ron and whoever else wants to be involved from the school system or other board members. I want to go around to these buildings and I want to get ownership. I want to understand what we're doing. So I need time for that. I also think that we ought to do the same thing on this issue that we did for the master plan issue. I think that we need to have another work session for sure, because unfortunately Dixie was sick Monday night, so with that not being recorded or taped, or she missed out on a lot of information, and I'm not using you as an excuse. But I think we should also I still think we should go out I think we should have two sessions out in the public. And maybe somebody will show up, maybe they won't. I don't know. But, we did that process when we went through closing the schools, and we were going to spend the $3 million that we had cash on hand. We included them in that process, so why are we going to be any different? I, like Linda, am a little bothered by the timeline. I mean, it feels like this has been kind of slammed through, and we've all heard the hallway talk about this coming up. We've all known that the bond was going to expire. So, I personally would like to see us spend some time with another work session and discussion, the community, and honestly, I think in fairness to everybody involved, I think the resolution for us to move forward, I think we're pushing it if we do it before March. So, I mean, we know this bond was going to retire for 6 years. Well, longer than that, 8 years. The loan was for 8 years, right? So, I just want to, I need to understand the projects, because I'm still not sure what's a need and what's a want. I'm still not sure. I'm still bothered by how we want to do the technology, because to me, by the way that we want to move the technology expense out of capital projects into the bond, to me has a feeling that we're talking more like a general referendum instead of a bond referendum for construction. So, because we're talking about software, we're talking about stuff that could easily be general fund expenditures, because whether we want to use the term or not, money moves back and forth. Capital projects is like the second general fund. So, I think, I'm not trying to jump on Linda's back, but I think that there needs to be some more discussions. I really do, and I think we need to involve the community, because we're going to ask them to pony up with the tax increase.
Suzanne?
Two things. First of all, what is it, as you talk about that, the community involvement, I appreciate and understand that, because I agree with that. What I wonder about is, what is it that you want to get from the community? You want to help them understand the projects? You want to have a vote? Have them sound off? I'm not quite sure what you're expecting from those meetings.
To answer that question, I think, one, they need to understand the project.
Absolutely.
Because what they don't understand is the way we're putting this project together. They have no say-so on whether their property tax goes up or not. That power lies solely on the 7 of us.
And I want to make it clear, the property tax will not go up that we have talked about. It will not go up. This does not affect the property tax, and it would be a misrepresentation to say it would increase.
Well, see, I would agree with that, because the bond comes off, the property tax drops.
But it wouldn't in our case.
But if we do nothing, if we do
Agreed.
nothing,
then it would come down.
The property tax will drop from 56 cents down to, or 64 cents down to 54 cents.
And if you did nothing, there would not be an increase. If you do something, there would not be an increase.
There'll be a decrease.
That's right.
There'll be a decrease. So by the mere fact that we're going to do something.
Let's not mischaracterize it, though.
Which leads to my other question.
But it is a pricing. It is a tax.
It is
Which
not.
leads to my other question, because I've been wanting to ask this. What are the odds that if we were to let this bond go away and not do any of these projects, or figure out which ones we could, what are the odds that our community's taxes would actually decrease, and for how long would that last?
In the past, when we have seen the taxes go down, because we have had the tax go down 6 cents on the assessment since I've been superintendent, and that has not changed the taxes in Richmond.
Because that's been my experience too, and so that's why I'm asking.
It is a little frustrating, because we are not given credit when we've seen the taxes fall off, because other taxing entities have had to increase their capacity to serve the community, and the taxes have been constant. So when you're looking at the tax rate in Richmond, as opposed to other townships or communities in Wayne County, you're going to see that we really haven't seen the decrease. It's only if you look at the school tax rate that you'll see that there's been a decrease. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I mean, that's what I thought that I had observed as well, and I guess I was just saying, kind of wondering if if I was misreading what I have seen. So.
I don't think we shared publicly tonight something that we shared on Monday, and that is we not only have the lowest school tax rate in the county, we have the 10th lowest in the state of Indiana. Among the schools in the conference, which are similar communities, we also have the lowest. And not just barely, it's significant. In some cases, it's half the tax rate that you see in other communities. So I have to tell you that we've done a nice job over the years of reducing that tax rate while we're doing important things with our buildings. And everything that's on that list is maintenance items. We are not talking about extravagant program enhancing or new program causing changes. We're talking about heating and air conditioning. In most of those cases, humidity control. Now,
that have been left undone is what I'm seeing. I mean, that have, well, in the mode of patch repair.
That's right.
That we have put back.
And a lot of those we've kept off because we've known that we would have this capacity. This was first discussed in 2006 or 7.
Oh, I know. I know.
And we brought it to the board, and we talked about how not only this could be scheduled, it could also position us without any fluctuation in the tax rate to address in 2020 what could be some very significant needs at the high school that we will continue to defer until that time.
Yeah. After Monday evening, I tried to reframe everything I heard into exactly what you were just talking about, why these projects. And a couple of things struck me as I looked at these. These are all basically infrastructure projects, even including technology, because technology in 2012 beyond is not just an add-on anymore. It has become that kind of an infrastructure. And so when I looked at those, and I have talked with folks who have had the humidity issues and the mold and the mildew, and you go back and you check even our 8,000 policies that we're working on right now, we have a responsibility, and there's legislation about humidity control and some of those things. But one thing that really struck me, a parent from Dennis said, wow, we're now going to have a building that's equitable, and that was the word she used, equitable to the east side of town to test. And I got to thinking about what these projects really do and why I could support them, because they do, and we have said we want to provide equitable facilities and equitable things, and I thought that was hugely important. So I tried to reframe why each of those projects were important. And I've been thinking about, and since I've been on the board, the protection that the property taxpayer has gained. First of all, our general fund used to be about 62%. Am I about right? 62% funded by property tax. And now that... Just the opposite. 30, well, see, I had the 62%. But now, none of it is property tax based, and the tax base that pays for public schooling is more distributed, more evenly than just for the property taxes. We've had tax caps, the circuit breaker, and so we've had those kind of protections for the property taxpayer. So it isn't that we are not paying attention to the property taxpayer in this county, because I think we have to all recognize that that is our responsibility. But the biggest thing I thought about after I left the other night that I wish I'd said was that part of what I think we're doing is protecting the taxpayer's investment. Charles is a gorgeous building, and if those 4 rooms aren't ready, and if the humidity isn't taken care of, and if the carpet isn't removed from Westview, I'm really glad you could put that in there. So I see this as a protection of the investment that we've already made, because I've been in some of those rooms in some of those areas where the humidity has just destroyed things that are going on there. So I see that as a little different perspective than what we talked about the other night. And I just wanted to talk about my reframing of what we were doing.
So, the next step
number one would be to schedule another meeting where we could discuss this. Well, I'm just going to, not because we're going to vote on anything at the first meeting, but because we have a 3-week period, I believe, there.
Well, we were responding to the request from the board to have another conversation to get this,
Right.
to get this flushed out, all the questions.
Some of us are going to be out of town.
Okay.
And so,
Well, I'll have to
and
check the
whether I'm
schedules.
out of town or not, I still stand on the fact that we should be given the proper amount of time to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us.
But what
I wasn't on the board in 2005. So I have been trying to do a lot of learning, short curve learning here, and a lot of catching up. And I just feel that that this is huge and that we have not been given the amount of time that we deserve.
I wasn't trying to rush you. I was just saying that we need to schedule another meeting so we can discuss this.
Okay.
Dixie?
I was just going to say, too, I heard comments about involving the community like we did in the master plan, and I really think that's important with an issue like this because there's some angry people out there. They're saying, we did a master plan, and this wasn't included, and where did this come from? Where did this $8 million all of a sudden, I mean, that's their perception, that's the way they see it. I understand that. They're wondering why wasn't it all in the master plan. So I think we need to do justice to them, to explain why we need this money, what it's for, you know, the whole ball game, because this is, to them, has just come out of the woodwork.
Thank you. Okay. Linda, you have a note under Superintendent and Board Reports, Reflections, and Celebrations that you'd like to read that came to the board.
I do. This is a holiday greeting that's addressed to the board, and it says, "Dear School Board, I want to thank you guys." I think maybe the girls are included too. You guys for giving me the great opportunity to be in early college. I've had so much fun in this program. I feel as if the teachers and students here have become part of my family. I also want to thank you guys for getting rid of the dress code. Your friend, Savannah Ponder. So thank you, Savannah, and Merry Christmas to you also.
Jeff?
I don't know. Paul Clark was a longtime custodian at Richmond High School. I don't know if any of you guys ever talked with the gentleman, but he was just a super nice guy. So he retired just about a year ago. Not even quite a year ago.
Well, he retired 2 years ago and then came back last year. He said he just needed to be around RCS and had other things to do, so we employed him at Dennis in the food service, the kitchen over there.
And it wasn't, I swear it wasn't 3 or 4 months ago that I was talking to him and his wife at the grocery store, and I just, you know, he was a nice guy, and I just, you know, my condolences go out to the family, so.
And long-term faithful employee, I mean, that's just one of those that you don't often get, so.
We're also finding little things about people like Paul. I just discovered in a conversation with someone else, and I don't have any names, I don't have any time period, but he recognized that a student needed clothes. And out of his own pocket, he re-outfitted that student, just brought the student in and to his office and said, "I have something for you," and that's what it was.
Nice.
Dixie?
And I just want to say, I know Karen's left, but I would like to thank her for being the highlight of this evening and making us have happy holidays, I guess.
Aaron, do you have your pen up in the air? Okay.
Well, We may or may not have a meeting before Christmas, who knows? If not, we want to certainly wish everyone happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa to everyone celebrating seasons. In that same vein, our athletic teams are doing well, but there's one in particular that I would really like to say something about. It's one that never gets any publicity whatsoever, and I believe still that they are undefeated, and that's our men and women's bowling team. And they are not the typical athlete that you would think of when you think of this, but they are the typical students that are walking our halls and making a difference in their lives every day, and they happen to be bowling and representing us, and they're taking great pride in that, and I think we should take great pride in also the fact that they're representing us well with, up to this point, an undefeated season.
Thank you.